So shall my word be that goeth forth out of my mouth. It shall not return to me void, but it shall accomplish my pleasure. And it shall prosper in the thing for which I sent it. For he shall go out with joy and be led forth in peace. And the mountains and the hills shall break forth before you into singing. And all the trees of the field shall clap their hands. Instead of the thorn shall come the fir. Instead of the briar shall come the myrtle tree. And it shall be to Yahweh for a name, for an everlasting son.
Hey, good morning. Welcome to Line by Line Bible Studies. We're continuing our study today in the book of Proverbs. All right, let's get it going here. We left off at about verse 24. I'd kind of put some breaks in here for my own sake. We'll just leave them be. There be 4 things which are little upon the earth, but they are exceeding wise. The ants are a people not strong, yet they prepare their meat in the summer. The conies are but a feeble folk, yet make they their houses in the rocks. The locusts have no king, yet go they forth all of them by bands. The spider taketh hold with her hands, and is in kings' palaces. There be 3 things which go well, yea, 4 are comely in going. A lion which is strongest among beasts, and turneth not away from any. A greyhound, and an he-goat also, and a king, against whom there is no rising up. A greyhound, and he-goat also, and a king, against whom there is no rising up. If thou hast done foolishly in lifting up thyself, or if thou hast thought evil, lay thine hand upon thy mouth. Surely the churning of milk bringeth forth butter, and the wringing of the nose bringeth forth blood. So the forcing of wrath bringeth forth strife. I think we're going to continue reading because I do believe we will go beyond that today. Proverbs 31. The words of King Lemuel, the prophecy that his mother taught him. What, my son, and what, the son of my womb, and what, the son of my vows? Give not thy strength unto women, nor thy ways to that which destroyeth kings. It is not for kings, O Lemuel. It is not for kings to drink wine, nor for princes strong drink, lest they drink and forget the law, and pervert the judgment of any of the afflicted. Give strong drink unto him that is ready to perish, and wine unto those that be of heavy hearts. Let him drink, and forget his poverty, and remember his misery no more. Open thy mouth for the dumb in the cause of all such as are appointed to destruction. Open thy mouth, judge righteously, and plead the cause of the poor and needy. Who can find a virtuous woman? For her price is far above rubies. The heart of her husband doth safely trust in her, so that he shall have no need of spoil. She will do him good and not evil all the days of her life. She seeketh wool and flax, and worketh willingly with her hands. She is like the merchant's ships. She bringeth her food from afar. She riseth also while it is yet night, and giveth meat to her household, and a portion to her maidens. She considereth a field, and buyeth it. With the fruit of her hands she planteth a vineyard. She girdeth her loins with strength, and strengtheneth her arms. She perceiveth that her merchandise is good. Her candle goeth not out by night. She layeth her hands to the spindle, and her hands hold the distaff. She stretcheth out her hand to the poor, yea, she reacheth forth her hands to the needy. She is not afraid of the snow for her household, for all her household are clothed with scarlet. She maketh herself covering of tapestry. Her clothing is silk and purple. Her husband is known in the gates. When he sitteth among the elders of the land, She maketh fine linen, and selleth it, and delivereth girdles unto the merchant. Strength and honor are her clothing, and she shall rejoice in time to come. She openeth her mouth with wisdom, and her tongue is the law of kindness. She looketh well to the ways of her household, and eateth not the bread of idleness. Her children arise up, and call her blessed, her husband also, and he praiseth her. Many daughters have done virtuously, but thou excellest them all. Favor is deceitful, and beauty is vain, but a woman that feareth the Lord, she shall be praised. Give her of the fruit of her hands, and let her own works praise her in the gates. Okay. First, back to the 4 things that are little, but they are exceedingly wise. And also I was going to say, it's like there'll be 4 things, there'll be 3 and 4. The reason it says that, in one way I want to look at it is because I don't want you to think, like I said, don't think these are the only things that are small and wise. The only things. These are the only things that are wonderful. It's like, that's what I mean about the woodenness. There's a tendency to want to read that sort of like, I remember having that kind of mentality, not out of any insolence or anything, because I know that's not the case. But I exaggerate it because, the provocation is to be wise. Not to be simple, but to be wise. Don't be wise in your own conceits, obviously. There's treachery on that end as well. There's a beauty to simplicity. Simple when concerning evil. Evil, I don't want to be all, I'm really wise concerning evil. That's not what we are looking for. Wise as serpents, harmless as doves. Wisdom to bring forth good things. So these examples are kind of straightforward. The ants are people not strong. They're tiny little creatures, right? Some of them are, stronger than others, right? But still, any individual ant, just like it says of the locust, they have no king. But they prepare their meat in summer. It's a point of wisdom to prepare for winter. And animals that prepare themselves to last out the winter, there's a wisdom in that. And all the creatures kind of know how to get through the winter, but, they notice that in the insect world, obviously there's new insects in the spring, but, a lot of times it's not like, what are they just seem to freeze, right? But the reason it's, all the animals are, the Lord takes care of all the animals, they all have the wisdom which God has given them that allows them to survive. But the reason the ant is notably wise is because for humans, we don't have the option to hibernate. We don't have we have to make like the ants. We can't do like the grasshopper. Grasshoppers, of course, they just die when winter comes. A lot of insects just die. Flies are terrible. They just go into, they hibernate. It's creepy. They come back to life. A lot of them die though. But so they try to find places to hibernate, and there's always a few coming back. I don't know, but after particularly deep freezes, we have fewer flies, I think, in the spring. It takes a while for them to come back. I remember there were years when we had heavy flies. That's about the biggest, it's funny that that's like the worst we have to deal with. We don't have scorpions coming in our houses or poisonous snakes. I've always, but we have winter where I live. I live in the northern hemisphere where winter is severe. And like I tell my kids, we have a disaster every year because we don't really get much in the way of earthquakes. We don't get much in the way of, other kind of hazards, poisonous insects or plants. And, it's kind of the climate is, but that's the thing, but it gets really cold in winter, and dangerously so. That's what makes me think. I was thinking in terms of like civilizational collapse and food sources and stuff because, I'm a man of my age. I know a lot about how to repair machines and stuff, and not how to, and a bit about gardening. I've always tried to keep that in mind. When the summer is near, when you see the fig tree blossom, you know that summer is coming. You know that the fruit thereof should be coming. Jesus cursed the fig tree when there was no fruit there, when there ought to have been. Well, When summer is coming, that means the harvest is on its way. There's also a spiritual component to this, Just like the 10 virgins, the 5 wise virgins, they took oil in their lamps, which is, symbolic of the Spirit, but also of the anointing of Christ, and of partaking of, you think about it, they took oil in their lamps. That goes back to the vision of Zechariah, I believe it was Zechariah, with the lamps and the oil coming out and feeding the 2 lamps. And it was God's Spirit feeding that holy oil. But it's just like the food we get from God, the bread of life, the word of God. Man shall not live by bread alone, but everywhere the oil of anointing is a food item also. But it also is a fuel to light fires and flames and light, which also is symbolic of revealing the truth and such. There's all that's connected. And so you want to be prepared with oil in your lamp, fuel for your fires, both literally and spiritually. Because, and even though if you're not, trust in the Lord, I would say that because it's like, hey, remember how Elijah fared. When he was with his back against the wall, there was a widow woman who sustained him with just a cruse of oil and a measure of meal, which sustained them for some period of, I forget, it was a month or something. I forget exactly what. But, and I had a dream along the same lines years ago where I was in that time and there was no water, and even the water in the ground was just no good because the waters were bad. I had no place to get them. And then there was a bottle of water in front of me, and it began to fill up. And then I fell into a trance in the dream, and then words are spoken, which I can't remember. And they seemed really, it was a cool dream. That's all, I don't have a lot of dreams that I think mean something, but that always meant that I should be assured of, it's pretty pedestrian. It's not like I'm making something new up. It's like that dream could come from, out of the multitude of business coming forth a dream. My business is the business of the Lord. So I got my head in the Bible. To me, it's funny that I don't have dreams of biblical type of dreams all the time, because I've had, you can count them on one hand. And I think off the top of my head, I can only think of that. Oh, there's two that I remember right now. There may be, sometimes I don't dwell on these things. That's the thing. Because, oh, you had a dream. It's like lots of people have had dreams. I know lots of people that I had a dream. The Lord gave you that dream and to bless you and to increase your faith, and therefore having your faith increased. Most other people are not going to find your dreams interesting. You have to just understand that. That's why God gave it to you in a dream. It's unless you're a pharaoh, I guess, or a king, and you have a really interesting dream. But a lot of times it's like, I don't know. Interpreting of dreams is sort of like, especially if it's personal, it's mostly for you. God gave us something to proclaim. When he gave the dreams to Pharaoh, it was so that there'd be some need in Pharaoh to reach out to, so Joseph could, come forth. If I have a dream, well, what's the purpose of my dream? Well, if God gives me a dream and it's important for people to know about it, and then I'm the one who's got to proclaim it. The idea that I would go to someone else, hey, you got to proclaim this for me, or what does this mean? Will you, that doesn't, someone might interpret a dream for us, but it's like, it doesn't make sense to me that God would give a big important dream to someone and then not give them the understanding of what to do with it. Because that's why I presume it is a personal thing. Most of the time, if God gave me some significant dream, says do this and do that, I just go do this and do that. If things aren't clear, then it probably has something to do with the things you're working on, personally and in life, or there's a lot of dreams are a tricky business. I always be very careful. I'm always glad I don't have if I had all kinds of dreams about God all the time, it would be interesting but strange. Some people do, and I'm not slamming you. I'm, like I said, that's not my path. I haven't had that. It goes back to my childhood because I asked not to be shown signs. I think I mentioned that before. That's why, when I got the Holy Spirit, it was it was very humbling for me in a lot of ways, because I had asked, I just want to have faith without ever seeing anything, seeing quote unquote. I didn't actually visually see anything, but to me it was enough. I said it was more like putting your finger in his wounds, quote unquote. I mean that metaphorically. I don't think that says anything about me except weakness. We have to be prepared ahead of time. That's the message. Okay, so conies are but feeble folk, yet they make their house in the rocks. The wisdom of there is obvious, to make your home build your house upon the rock. You don't want to build your house upon the sand, as Jesus said, because the wind and the rain and the tribulation is going to come, and it's going to blow those things away. And it's like, and because why? Because I know I'm weak, and the enemy is strong, and the enemy is mightier than me, and the enemy outnumbers me. I am a feeble folk. You know what I mean? We, like Paul said, the apostles, we're like last of all. We're the offscouring of the earth. Conies are, of course, rabbits. If that's not obvious. Well, it's similar, right? There's rabbits and conies. They're very similar. I know I think there's a distinction between them, just like hares, Same kind of animal, though, basically. Which is making me think of, I just can't get over the fact that, and this is a little off topic, but somewhat because there's animals, that when I started talking to Answers in Genesis people months ago about, when I realized that they had abandoned special creation in favor of a belief in a kind of a turbo evolution. Turbo evolution. They went from evolution is false to basically we believe in turbo evolution. They don't say that, but that's what they describe. That after that Noah only took one kind of bear on the ark. That's how they get all the species, one kind. And then after they got off the ark, rapidly that developed into all the species we see today. Polar bears. And there's a lot of species of bear out there that are bears. You know what I mean? And I'm not saying that ain't possible, but literally, all of the panda bears and all that's very different, and they've been around a while. And it's I just think it's whatever. That's when I thought about rabbits and conies and hares, and it's like I thought we were accepting microevolution. Like, okay, we'll accept that hey, there's some obviously the animals can evolve. So otherwise, what's with all these weird dogs we've been making? I mean, there's obviously some changes are possible. Human beings change. There's all kinds of possibility with DNA and all that. Yeah. I'm not convinced of like the whole macro story that's how that explains all life. I don't think so. It might explain a bit of speciation, but it ain't gonna explain where do the genuses come from? Where do the phylum, where do those arise? The origin of phylum, the origin of families, the origin of, they say, it's all this from the same. I'm not convinced of that. Well, I'm definitely, one thing, whether I'm convinced or not, we don't really know how that works. It works like the way we say. It's like, okay, the problem is a lot of that stuff is like, suddenly appears. Ugh. Whatever. To me, it's like, having to understand how everything works is really secondary to understanding the truth. You make your house in the rock. What is the rock? Jesus Christ is the rock. And that's where you anchor yourself to God. They when you're weak, you fix yourself to something strong. I look upward to the power that made the world, and that does indeed look after the justice of the world. And it's like into that perfect ideal that is God and that Christ embodies. Literally embodies, and that he was embodied. He became flesh. The Word became flesh. And he is the rock, and he dwelt among us. That rock that followed them in the wilderness, that rock that was Christ, that gave forth the water. I mean, it is that firm foundation on which you can rely. The stone that is rejected has become the head of the corner. It's like all those, the third little pig made his house out of bricks, which is a kind of a rock, right? It's like not straw, not hay, not wood, not stubble. Rocks. Yeah, in the end times, when men finally see their fate and their wisdom comes on them, how badly they screwed up, they're going to throw all their riches to the moles and the bats as they go into the mountains and the caves and the rocks finally at the very, I wonder if that symbolically means like, we'll turn to God now. Just like they say that in the foxhole, everyone gets religion because because when you're faced with that kind of like your life could end at any moment, you think like, well, it's like, and, it's like fake it till you make it, man, because it's like, you don't know. And you might try to find a little faith that people often do. Reach out to God. In their moments of weakness. Yes, because when you're weak, He is strong. And I can tell you, like I said, it's like, if I'm actually, God is there. He's there. He's still coming. They really think they're going to get away with all this stuff. Then they're just digging themselves deeper and deeper graves, and slower, and hotter and hotter. I don't know if a hotter fire is better or a cooler fire. So you fry slowly, or maybe like the worse you are, the longer you wait in line. That's got to be torment, right? Watch it. Not that I think I don't take all that necessarily so literally. Like that, I've often thought, like, how will that really work? Is it all going to be instantaneous? Is like, do we have to go through the motions? We do have to go through the motions in many ways. I mean, we're going through life, so who knows? It's like, I don't know. I'm just willing to. I was thinking about it. I've said I'm willing to consider. I was thinking to myself about Job, and I'm like, I was thinking about, I could consider Job to be a parable, and then I thought, oh well, do you believe? But Paul, do you believe Job really lived? And I was like, well, I guess I do, but I do, but the thing is, I don't believe he had to, and I think the writing is it feels like literature. And the thing is, people, they say, oh, you're saying it's not true. It's like, no, you understand, like a parable is a story based on truth. Let's say based on a true story, right? This is based on a true story. You'll see a movie, but it's totally not what happened. When you watch the movie, based on a true story. Parables are not based on a true story, where it's like there was some dude who happened. I don't really think that. And I'm not sure Job is a parable, but I know Jesus' parables are parables. Parables are stories. Just stories. You understand what a story is? Based on the truth. Not based on a true story, but based on the truth. And that's the way you got to look at the parables of Jesus. And things, perhaps, like I said, I'm willing to look at it that way. Like I like to be willing to look at things in different perspectives because I don't think it's incompatible with faith. You can know God is every bit real and understand and trust and have faith in the resurrection of Jesus, and still entertain those possibilities about the various books. There's so many books in the Bible. It's like what each author intended by them. That's something I'm spending my life figuring out, and I like to understand. And I don't want to be told by somebody just dump a bag of beliefs on me and zip me up in a wineskin forever. I feel pity for these young people who come out of seminary in some denomination and then they're put in charge of a church. It's like, that can never go well. I mean, you think it's going well, but it's not going well. Because you can never explore the Bible and learn more. You already know everything, I guess, Because even though they all disagree with each other on various points of doctrine, you're in the one true one, buddy. Right? Yeah. That's why I'm not gonna try to start any sort of thingamajiggy, because the implication is that, we found it, let's fix it with nails. There's a certain amount of principles. God has a self-organizing church. It exists in Him. And it supersedes and overlaps all the other churches. And yeah, it takes them in, but not their political structures are just ways for evil people to gain control. And that's why you have churches, so many fallen churches. We should speak. I mean, the apostasy certainly is in full swing. I don't know how bad it has to get. Like I said, I've always thought like it must go to beyond just dereliction of doctrine, but to actually over entirely to another Christ, because it is that apostasy in the prophetic words of Paul, and I'm just meaning that what he said there was quite prophetic. That there would not be but again, it's quite pedestrian in the prophetic sense that there would not be that we would not return, that Christ would not return, and we would not be gathered unto him until the man of sin appear, the son of perdition, and of course the apostasy. Those things must happen first. We definitely have a form of apostasy in full swing, but there's always been apostasy in the church. There's always been evil men grasping for power for centuries. Remember, in the days of Martin Luther, they thought that the Pope was the Antichrist, and they still think he's the Antichrist. And I'm not going to disagree as far as, like, I do think that there are Antichrist figures who do, like I said, there are many Antichrists. And those that do the work of Antichrist, well, they are of Antichrist. And so, but the idea that that's just, that's it. No, there are many Antichrists, but there's an ultimate Antichrist. I do believe that. And the ultimate Antichrist is the one, I think, that creates the ultimate apostasy, because they will actually receive him instead of Christ, which is literally the meaning of, or one of the ways you can interpret the idea of Antichrist. So we got to know, be prepared ahead of time. Have your meat ready. Make yourself secure in Christ. Locusts have no king. And also when you build things, use wisdom. Don't build garbage. The locusts have no king if they go forth, all of them by bands. That's like what I was saying about the church. That's the thing from the beginning. He said, hey, you know what? When the children of Israel asked for a king in the days of Samuel, the Lord said to Samuel, don't be offended at this. They have not rejected you. They have rejected me. All right? I was their king. God was their king. For the locusts have an organizing principle. It's in their instinct. They don't need a leader. You could, like geese, they have a leader, though. It's obvious. Locusts, though, it's like obviously they don't. Sometimes really big flocks of birds, it's not obvious who the leader is either. Like, when they move and stuff. But the locusts are kind of like an army, though, and they descend like a horde, and it feels almost organized. As far as, like, if you've ever seen footage of actual plagues of locusts. And it's a behavior they exhibit. It's an emergent behavior. It's interesting because grasshoppers literally turn into locusts. I remember watched a video about how this happens. And I forgot the exact mechanism, but it's like there's like a harmless thing, and then like when there's too many of them or something like that, when they're around too many of their own kind, there's like becomes this swarming effect or something like that. It changes their development, or I forget exactly how it goes. But the idea for us is that we don't require a king. People say, we need a leader, we need a king. It's like, no, we don't. No, we don't. Pastors were never supposed to be like this be-all, end-all. Any more than it's apostles themselves don't take up like we are the kings of the church. In fact, they were like, we're the last of all, because he that is greatest must be servant of all, and and that's the way it goes. The service level of a lot of people who claim apostleship in these days aren't really exhibiting the service level that an apostle. An apostle is not someone who ties their rear end down at a church somewhere. As far as I've never read of one doing that in the Bible. Apostle literally means apostello, sent off. You got to go. Apostle is someone who's like more like a missionary is more like an apostle. Flat out, way more like an apostle, because they're going to people that have never heard the gospel before, and they're actually sent by the church. I mean, they qualify for the title. We probably just don't like to give it to them. Well, because maybe it's like maybe they're not worthy. Not every missionary has done quite a good job, and a lot of times it's been misguided. They've done better work than than the times when the gospel was spread at the end of the sword. Both those things are not according to Christian teaching. As far as like I mean, no, there's not. I mean, peacefully going to people and preaching the gospel and teaching them to read or whatever, and feeding them. A lot of people look at that sort of missionary work as insidious, as undermining culture. It's like, would you like to live in a hut in the jungle? I mean, it's like a lot of these people would like to be live more comfortably and not live on the edge. I mean, what is it? It's this sort of vanity of our. I understand, like, we don't want to be culturally imperialist. We don't want to force our culture on other people. But also, there's many aspects to what we would call civilization, perhaps, but I would call maybe the infrastructure of civilization. There's so much about like sewage and stuff, and the improvement of the quality of life and the knowledge that they could live longer, happier lives than living in the jungle. That's a fact. And I think that, imagine if they had discovered all these things and had themselves, they can have their culture. But, I mean, I don't want to sound condescending in saying they can have their culture. That's really condescending sounding. I don't mean that. But I mean, it's possible to upgrade your infrastructure of your society as far as, clean water and all that stuff without losing your culture. It's also possible to become Christian without having to become like a European or something like that. I think that's when they got that confused. They thought, they began to conflate their own society and the way that they lived in the world with what was Christian. You know what I mean? And their customs and all that. And then they began to force that onto people and their mode of dress. And it's it's really not in the spirit of the way Paul preached. As far as, I've read Paul for many years. I'm very familiar with his writings. It's just not in the spirit of the way he preached, as far as I can tell. So, we have an organizing. It's good to go forth and preach the gospel. We need to be organized, but we should avoid the Moses. What it means is, like, since he's imparting wisdom to the locusts, obviously they're just insects doing their thing, right? But what he's telling us is to use wisdom as if the locusts had wisdom, which means to band together. And that, that's like they say, things on a small scale. That's why, in a sense, I almost long to be banned from the internet so I can just go out and play places. And just, I long to go back to 1989 when there was no internet. And I could just, not that I do, but part of me does. Part of me yearns for the old. I know that, but I have no misconception that we will ever go back. We won't. There's only forward. There's only the world to come. This or the kingdom of God, whichever, whenever that's going to be. Whether we are on the edge of the end times or whether the end times are 1,000 years off, it doesn't change a thing. You should still be at the same state of readiness. Being ready for winter, being ready, having your house strengthened. I mean, these are the things you want to look to. Like I said, both literally and spiritually. And so you band up because you cannot, a man alone, now how should one chase 1,000 and two chase 10,000? There's a, it's a non-arithmetic, it's not geometric, just trigonometric. No, wait, what's what I want? Oh, whatever. Exponential growth. When two, it's not, the power of two is two, it's not 1 + 1 = 2. It's the power of two. What one can do, two can do even more, 10 times or whatever. Not literally when I say the power of two, but more like that. We're talking about exponential growth as opposed to just your plain old 1 + 1 = 2, we 3, a linear growth. We are more powerful together than we are individually. And same thing for the locusts. And we don't need a human king among us to accomplish that. But there are many men that want to be in that position. Like I said, and a lot of people want someone to be in that position because of what my friend Mark Nutting used to call Moses syndrome, because they always want Moses to do things for us. Moses, you go talk to God. Moses, do this, do that. And they always want someone else to be the one who tells. They want a human face to tell them what God wants. They don't want to engage with the mountain. They don't want, and I get it. I mean, I had a dream, and this wasn't from God necessarily. This is totally a dream about. There was like out the window of the car, there was a stream of bullets flying, like a thick stream of bullets that I felt like the urge to put my hand into, which I did in the dream. And they were like rubber bullets, though, or something. But it was like, I don't know. It was weird. Weird thing, right? It reminded me of all the times in my life when I've ran into danger. And I always feel like I'm always sort of terrified I'm going to die by misadventure because of this stupid instinct I have. Like when when the tornado came, I was like, everyone get in the basement. I ran outside. It's like everyone get. I'm like, I'm nuts. And at the time I don't, because I wanted to, whatever. It's like I sort of run at it. And so the idea of a mountain smoking with fire and lightning, I would be drawn to that like a moth to the flame, with probably the same end effect on the poor moth. Okay, I'm drawn like that. Some people are smarter; they have a different instinct. I don't know if that's smarter; it's a different instinct. Because I think probably because people, I've heard evolutionary speculators talk about this kind of stuff, where they're like, we need, because it's usually because people follow the crowd, but we need some people who don't follow the crowd so that to alert us at the times when no, it shouldn't be done. Because there's a safety in doing what everyone else is doing sometimes, but sometimes it's not safe. Okay, because a lot of times what everyone's doing is perfectly fine, because everyone knows what they're doing. You're just kind of going along like, okay, I'll just do what everyone else is doing. It's a good strategy a lot of times. Like if you don't know how to dance, look around and just do what everyone else is doing or try. It's a good strategy. Just try to do what everyone else is doing. But if you're not circumspect about it, it can get you into big trouble doing what everyone else is doing. Sometimes it's good to zig when everyone else is zagging. Just be mindful, we don't want to run afoul of the Lord. If my mindset is different maybe than others, I know it's not just me. I know there are plenty of, it's just some people are different than others. And there's plenty of people who have that instinct to move to danger. Which is, I don't know, whatever. It's necessary, of course. I mean, there's definitely, you gotta have people who want to do that, I guess. The thing is, the worst part about it for me is I have the instinct, but in my heart, I don't feel brave at all. I always feel terrified. But I think it's like this intense curiosity or something. Anyways, it's not just a follow along with the crowd thing. You know what I mean? It's because it's because sometimes people fall. They seem to be doing something without direction. I mean, if you have a king telling you what to do, then you're doing it because the king told you. I mean, that's the point. Don't just, you can act together, but don't do it just because some king told you to. I mean, I would say that's part of it, somewhere buried deep in there. Because you should be obedient to the king and the government. Like I said, I don't advocate the disrespect of the law, God forbid, even the law of the land. Like I said, I wear my seatbelt. And I don't go around trying to provoke the government, except by saying provocative things, I guess. But I don't say things like, don't pay your taxes or some nonsense like that. Pay your taxes. You should. Some people say you shouldn't. I'm like, well, I don't know. Jesus said you should, so I say you should. Right? If you don't like what the taxes you're paying, then we need to change the laws. We got to change the laws, perhaps. I mean, we definitely need to change, maybe need some new laws, right? But thing is, we shouldn't look for someone to save us, some other than the Lord himself. We shouldn't look to a king locust to guide us, to lead us, to find, we have organization enough without kings and princes. And here we go. The spider taketh hold of their hands and is in kings' palaces. So the locusts have no king. And they go forth very organized. On the other hand, the spider, which of course is a very solitary insect. I don't know of any collective species of spiders. I mean, the cobweb spiders are somewhat collective. We got a lot of them in the basement. I got a creepy room in my basement where there's an oil tank, used to be an oil furnace down there, and the oil tank's still there, and all these spiders are in their webs in this room, but they all have like fungus sprouting from their bodies and their joints. These little explosive little fungi, or maybe it's I think it's it could be bacteria bloom, but it's kind of creepy. But spiders usually work alone. I mean, they definitely don't work in pairs. They don't hang out with each other like locusts do. They tend to eat each other. A locust might eat another one, I don't know. They generally don't. They're looking to eat all the grain and stuff. It's the praying mantis that eat each other. And spiders eat each other. So, she taketh hold with her hands as in king's palace. What does that mean? Well, of course, obviously, it's like, spiders get everywhere. You can get rid of them, but they always come back. They're persistent. They get in. They take hold. You know what I mean? It makes me think of that verse in the New Testament where it says, the kingdom of God suffereth violence, and the violent take it by force. There's a lot to think about in that verse, and without going into it, but there's that aspect of, hey, you want the kingdom of God? Seize it. You want something? Ask, and it shall be given you. Seek, and you shall find. That attitude of like I said, I've said it often, when in the parable of the widow and the unjust judge, he tells us to be persistent in our entreaties, to go after it. You know what I mean? Spiders are resourceful and cunning, and they creep, and they lay hold. You know what I mean? They climb in, they find a way to get wherever they want to get. And even the king can't keep her out, She, and often the spider is a sort of a villainous picture, because there is a negative side to that sort of cunning persistence. I want it. This is what I want. I'm going to put myself here. Paul himself said, covet the greater gifts. You should look. Here's the thing. To me, to obtain the resurrection is the work. It's God's work. He already finished it, and it's accomplished, and I need only have faith. That's it. That's done. Salvation finished. But still, there's something to lay hold of. That's a promise of righteousness. Now I can freely go forth without fear of failure and try to live and be the Christian, the righteous person that God called me to be, with no fear of anything. I mean, because I can have this great trust that the Lord has paid my sin. I need not fear him in the sense of fear his retribution as the just punishment of my sins. And knowing that, I don't foolishly take advantage of that and then sin some more. Though, it may be that you sin, but meaning to cynically go forth and pursue evil things. I take on faith when I'm 19, but instead of going married, I continue to be a fornicator. That would be, what does that mean, Paul? Don't be a fornicator. Don't choose the path of fornication. Do what's right. Don't be a whoremonger. We want to lay hold of the kingdom of God and pursue it with all our might. It's like love the Lord with all your strength, all your heart, all your might. It's not calling for half measures. Jesus doesn't want 10%. He wants everything. Even your body, a living sacrifice unto God. And that's what you have to lay your fingers into and sink them in and grab hold. Like with a spider-like, walking on the ceiling type grip. How high, how tight would you have to grip to the ceiling to walk across it? To get into the king's palace? What would you do to get into the king's palace? You're already in, but you can do whatever you want. It's like you already got, I have every right to be there, so let's go. Why not begin acting like it now? The kingdom is coming. You want to live there, really? Then why you live in the world like of the world? It's a question. Whenever I have confronted sin, it's what I think. That's what I think. Why, don't you want to go to the kingdom? What's wrong with you? I mean, what, you want to stay here? You stunad? It's Italian for stupid. This is my like I said, the one insult I will afford myself, because it means to be in a stupor. At least that's how I take it. It's not of an affliction. It's like a man drunk. Stupid. Like when my buddy says, you're on crack. Which is, it's like, what are you on, crack? Because you say things that don't make sense. It's like, it's a proper, it's kind of a because you're not making fun of someone's actual affliction. And so now we have the 3 things that go well. What were those things called? Well, wise, a little bit wise, small but wise. We also are but little, like the wise widow. She was just this, avenge me of my adversaries. And though that judge feared neither God nor men, he did avenge her of her adversaries because of her persistence, because of importunity, because it's annoying, because he just wanted to get her, and God doesn't look at us with such a negative attitude, but he does want us to be persistent like that. I used to tell the story about my son who, the first one it was just like, oh, will you make me a tool bench work area? I was like, okay. And the other ones were kind of like, why? And I felt bad at first. I'm like, well, I wish I'd done this for the other kids. I'm like, but none of them ever indicated, I didn't have any idea that they were interested. I thought, I should have, of course they're interested. They're interested, but they're afraid to ask. Don't be afraid to ask. Asking it shall be given you. Seeking you shall find. I did a bad job of communicating to my kids that they could ask. But the Lord has told us over and over again, ask, ask. I always feel very gratified that when God gave me his Holy Spirit and I felt the power come on me, what I had asked was that he give me my heart's desire. And that God would say yes to that it brings tears to my eyes, but I'm not letting them come out. That's all. It does. It brings them there, and I'm saying, no, thank you. I don't want to cry. But because it's a very positive thing for my walk. Does me a world of good. Because otherwise it's like you feel so presumptuous in teaching. I like to be conscientious about everything. I don't have some grand commission other than that moment and me knowing what I want. I'm like, okay, I guess that was a yes. Man. But he said that. If you abide in me and my words abide in you, you will ask what you want, what you will, and it will be done to you. Because what I wanted in my heart was what he wanted. And I got it. When you bring yourself into alignment with God, that's what happens. He meets you. Especially if you need it. You may not. You have enough faith. I wanted to be like the ones that he told Thomas about, those who would, having never seen, believe. There are many people who have been like that. I mean, I haven't seen the Lord the way Thomas saw him, but, I still chide myself. I still think it's something to improve upon. Could have done better. Oh, well, he knows our frame. infirmity of our flesh. He knows our weaknesses, and he is willing to strengthen us where we are weak. If you have done, I'd rather go there, but this one's kind of weird. There are 3 things which go well. Yea, 4 are comely in going. A lion, which is strongest among beasts, and turneth not away for any. Again, like I said, sometimes people get that that means generally. I know they'll be like, oh, what about the honey badger? The honey badger, sometimes pray get away, sure. The point is, lions are fierce, dangerous, and this is, again, like a lot of figures of speech. They won't turn aside for anybody. It's like, it's a figure of speech, which means like they don't turn away for nothing. I use another kind of figure of speech. Nothing. You mean nothing? It's like, come on, cut it out. Everyone was there. Everyone in the whole world. No. I mean everybody. You know what I mean by everybody, right? Everybody was there. Except John and Fred and all that, yeah. But everybody else. But, so they go well. What do they mean by that? I almost want to know what the NIV thinks about, like, what do they mean by they go well? Are you a goer? They go, I mean, I assume it means in their movements and the beauty of their motions, right? But I want to know what the wisdom is I'm supposed to see in that. Hold on, NIV. All right, I need this and that, and then this. All right. Okay. Stately in their stride, and then move with stately bearing. Okay. I mean, I figured that it meant something about the way they go, right? They go well in their movements. In fact, I remember, I forget, was it the book Conan? Conan the Barbarian, he was the cat-like in his movements, right? In the book, he was described with his cat-like reflexes. The Sumerian, Sam, I forget how they pronounce it. Anyways, yeah, cat-like. Of course, the lion is a very graceful animal, which retreats before nothing, whatever. And then we have I want to go back real quick. Hold on. Let's see. And I want to look at greyhound, just because. Now, a greyhound makes sense, right? Because it's the fastest dog, and I don't know where. A greyhound. I don't know. He-goat? Let's see the he-goat. He-goat is definitely a goat, a male goat. This word is mothin. It says lions. From an unused root to be slender, properly the waist or small of the back, only in the plural. Oh, loins. Sorry, I read that lions. It's loins. Huh. So I wonder how they got that. Let's look at the Brown Driver Briggs here and see if the place of wearing a girdle, things attached to the girdle, linen breeches, general in the middle of the top, water watching. 2, the loins as a seat of strength. Okay, it's obvious this is the right word because strong helps us by telling us how it was translated. Maybe there's more words here that they're not showing. Like if it was like the loin dog or something, and that's like the whatever. We're just gonna assume that is a Coney is right. I didn't think there was any problem with that. All right, whatever. We're gonna just go with greyhound. I'm not gonna get too eloquent about it since I don't. The loins. There's got to be some sort of figurative meaning, like I said, like it's the loin dog or something. Greyhounds are thin, so maybe it was referred to because of the thinness of its smallness of its back, or whatever. I don't know, some other sort of thing. But the point is, like, things are graceful. These go well. They are comely in going. The lion which turneth not away for any, a greyhound, a he-goat also. So, and a king. I don't want to get too esoteric with this and read all kinds of strange meanings into it. First of all, the he-goat is a he-goat. And I immediately think, well, goats are not, you usually think of a goat as like kind of like a weird animal a little bit. It's got those weird eyes and stuff. But if you think about the goats and the ram type, when you get in the mountain goats and stuff, and their ways upon the rocks, and the way, the goats that they would be familiar with would be up in the Rocky Mountains, not the Rocky Mountains of America, but like, in places that maybe are inaccessible. I believe they have, I think that is the kind of animals that they may have been speaking of. Because they are quite graceful in their movements. And a greyhound, certainly if you're talking about a literal greyhound, I don't know if they were literally bred at that time. Well, they must have been in the King James time, obviously. And they're very, especially when they're running, they're beautiful. When they're standing around, they don't look so interesting. The goats are kind of, the greyhounds are kind of awkward looking. I mean, whatever. They're skinny and all that. There's nothing wrong with them. I don't want to insult the greyhound fans. No offense meant. A king against whom there is no rising up. Now, again, is there no rising up against a king? Does the lion not turn away for any? Well, it ought not be, right? The lion should stand there and be a lion. The fact that sometimes the lion doesn't is only just like, oops, there it goes. Things are not as they should be. Again, remember, the Proverbs often concern themselves with cosmic truth, meaning that a king ought to be a kind of thing. There is no rising up against the king. As far as that's how it is in my house. There is no rising up against Dad. There will be no rising. Try. Like I said, you think you're ready to throw me off my throne? Give it a try. And I realize that's why I say that authority makes room for itself. You can't tell people this stuff. Like I said, you can't say to your wife, you must obey me, but I'm totally unrespectable and she, and I didn't marry a woman who's going to be like, okay, I'm going to work with you on this. I'll obey you, even though you're really being difficult. Make sure when you marry, you're all on board with the same program. It's most convenient that way. It's all for the best. Because, like I said, it's not just about being a Christian. It's like, what kind of Christian are you? And to me, it's not about, like I said, it's about a woman that truly fears the Lord. It's about, not necessarily, there's different people match up good with different people. It's going to depend on what level of, not everyone's going to, like I said, as a teacher, I need someone who has my zeal. And the kind of zeal, let's call it that way, because I don't like to say people are less zealous if they don't teach. It's totally a question of gifts. But we all need to hear the Word of God and be filled with the Word of God. And that's something we all got to be zealous after, to be filled up with it. And that is for our good, for sure. But the he-goat, they're graceful in going, there should be no rising. I want to look, right. There should be no rising up against the king. That is the king that is comely in going. That is the, and comely in going, what does that mean? Well, it's like, there goes a king when you see a king, right? Yeah, he looks good. Look at him move. You know what I mean? Like, when you see a king in motion, like, you ever say, I've seen them at work. I remember it's like, I've seen them in action, right? I've seen them in action. I'm going to think of it like that. Like, a king in action is probably better. A king who in action, who, it's good when you see something in action, a king that you can't rise up against. A lion, which turneth not away for any. A greyhound as it sprints down the track, whether there was tracks or not. You know what I mean? The speed. I like speed because when I received the Holy Spirit, it was the words that came to me were all about speed. That I should be swift. That's dogs are a great spiritual example. There's bad, again, just like all things, there's negative things. Dogs returning to their vomit, but there's also the loyalty of the beast, the dog, and they have their virtues. And one of them is their dogged pursuit. Right? And when a dog's being a dog, the way a dog ought to be a dog, just like when a king's being a king, the way a king ought to be a king, when a goat's being a goat, the way a goat ought to be a king. Again, there's no mountain he can't climb. There's no defiance that he will truck. There's no prey that he will not hunt down, the greyhound. He will catch that rabbit someday, right? And the lion also says, I will not be intimidated. I will not be intimidated. You want to go well? Don't be intimidated. Get after the prey. Be nimble be nimble. You can go from, flexibility. The goat I see is like the nimbleness. And king, do not, understand what your authority is and use it. You know what I mean? Don't be authoritarian per se. I mean, I'm not so much I don't mind I believe in authority. I believe in authority. I'm not an authoritarian. I'm more of a libertarian, but also I am an absolute authoritarian when it comes to Jesus Christ and his kingdom. I'm just in the affairs of men, I'm libertarian. In the affairs of God, I'm an absolute authoritarian. And also I oppose totalitarianism. Even though in God, I know it's a totalitarian system. He will, he already has complete control and oversight of everything. And I accept that because I trust him to be benevolent. Now, men, when they want to do such things, they're playing God. and they're trying to be God. And that's not a good thing for men to do. When men start playing God, they start getting delusional about their moral decisions and all these things. And they haven't said, I have studied these things for years. You know what I mean? I put my mind to it, to understanding right and wrong and the subtleties of difficult problems. And I think, and a lot of people mostly do, they get a trade or a job and they work. And they don't really, again, I work too, but it's like, you got to make sure you make time for God and all that. And I don't mean just going to church on Sunday. It's not, you're going to be left hungry spiritually, and without it, you're gonna dry up, and you're gonna not have a good outcome in that. Well, we're not gonna get to chapter 31, but we are gonna finish this chapter. So I think I did think I was gonna have nothing to say, but the Lord always helps me understand. I don't know if that's what that all means, but it was certainly meaningful in a good way. That's why I say I don't really even have to be right about that. That's what I said was truth. You know what I mean? If you can't decipher it all on some level, it's like when you have the Spirit of God, I can just make up what that greyhound means. And it's true because I'm just telling you the truth otherwise. But I'm also going to tell you that it may not be exactly what that means. There we go. You know what I mean? Because we derive blessing from the inspiration of the Word, even if we don't fully understand. I've known that for many years. Even, not full understanding made me curious. I want to find out more. It's something to say, you got to go to school to get to know God. That's definitely anti-biblical. It's like, if we want to teach other people about God, you got to go to school to get God. I thought so too. Certainly if you want to get a job teaching people, then you need to go to school because they want to make sure you've been trained. I understand that. That's why I don't ask people to pay me. I don't want to talk about that all the time because it starts becoming a toot your own horn garbage. So I'll characterize that as me trying to toot my own horn, which is more of a sin. Anyways, if thou hast done foolishly in lifting up thyself, look, I walked right into the next verse. If thou hast thought evil, lay thy hand about. Shut up. Stop. Just stop. Shut up. You only make things worse by jabbering on. Just keep your mouth shut. Once you do something stupid, the best thing to do is to immediately change course. Of course, I would say also to acknowledge when you do wrong, when you misstep. May not be a big deal, no big deal, even a little deal. You just acknowledge, oops, I didn't mean to. And then, because a lot of times lifting up yourself is because like you want to be above what you are. Like, I'm not a totally good person. I want you to think I am. So I'm going to lie and pretend and excuse and make all kinds of noise in order to lift myself above you. I'm going to glory in my glories. That's lifting up yourself is foolishness. As Paul said, I would rather glory in my infirmities. At least you could gain something out of that. Talk about, well, let me tell you about all my strengths. It's like, I don't mind talking about it because I'm not trying to impress you. Because I always said, like, where I am strong is mostly stuff that came by nature. And I don't find the nature, to me it's much more impressive if, like, I have an urge to steal and I don't. That's a battle won. The fact that I am too afraid to steal because I have a strong fear of that or whatever. I'm not saying I'm like that. But let's say that's the thing. I'm afraid I'll get caught. I'm afraid of this. I'm afraid. There's not a lot of virtue in my obedience. It's less virtuous. It's still good to be obedient. But, we fear God. But a lot of times we fear consequences. And that's good reason too. But it doesn't render us virtuous, per se. Well, like I said, there's cheap virtue and then there's virtue that really counts for me as far as the stuff that's hard for me to do. I'm most interested in, rather than in boosting all the things that I've either learned or I was good at just by nature. God's gifts are, the way you want to. If you have God's gifts, show them by using them. Not by talking about them. As far as thinking evil, again, we have lifting ourselves up. That could be publicly or in our own heart, And thinking evil is a more general thing, like we have an evil thought. Like if you have an evil thought, you can even prevent yourself from talking by laying your hand on my mouth. Not necessarily literally, but it's saying that's what you just. Because out of the heart proceeds evil wickedness, Let that evil thought die in your heart. That's where all the evil thoughts should die. When they present themselves there for your consideration, sometimes you can't, sometimes temptation comes. And with the temptation may come an evil thought. And you have to take captive that thought. As the Apostle Paul said, taking captive every thought to the obedience of Christ. Is no sin at that point. And you don't need to worry, if you're worried, is that sin when I have an evil thought? Well, don't worry about that level of it, okay? If you're just worried about the evil thoughts that you're taking captive, like, boy, I have an evil thought, but I take it captive and I start thinking about something else. Again, that's why it's important to be busy about something. If you're idle too much, if you don't have interest, if you're not interesting, that part of being interested, not being bored with life is being interested in things and doing things and having some sort of passion. I have multiple passions because I get bored of one thing and I got to do something else. I never get tired of studying His Word on a daily basis. I never get burned out on that. I feel this like I never feel. I mean, I don't know. Sometimes it's when I'm tired. Sometimes it's not as much. It's not as enjoyable. That's what I would call it. It's not as pleasant an experience to talk for an hour if I'm really tired or something like that. So sometimes it's not great. Okay, I confess. But most of the time I do like it. But yeah, you don't have to worry. Evil thoughts are definitely something we don't want to have a lot of. I have these evil thoughts all the time. It's like, but one, we don't want to. If we're not acting on them, that's good. If we're not dwelling on them, that's even better. Meaning dwelling on them in our minds. Because that also gets into being sin. There's some point at which that evil thought is hanging around too long. And now it's a kind of a sin. Like Jesus said, it's like the adultery in your heart. It's like if you meditate on adultery too much and adulterous thoughts, you've committed adultery. Not in the same. It's not as consequential as if it's literally done. Obviously, I don't think wives should leave their husbands for their for the very common problem that men have. When men are being assaulted with such pornography in these days and age, you have to be somewhat be forgiving, not somewhat. Be forgiving, but and loving. I think my wife did me the most good when she stopped being angry about it, when she stopped thinking it meant I wanted another woman, and she just forgave me and loved me and kissed me and made me feel horrible. I mean, it's what they say. It's true. It's like all the other responses made me feel like defensive, or I had to do something, and like because she needed me, or she was upset because it hurt and all that. But then after a while, she stopped. Things, after time, she realized, we've been married a long time, and things are going to be a problem. And it put more pressure on me than ever, like the loving approach. I'm just telling you the truth. For let my folly be your wisdom. And may it be a blessing to you. Now this last one, and we're going to be done. Whatever, we want to finish the chapters, and we'll have the virtuous woman for probably the next 2 days at least, and that's fine. That'll be perfect. So, okay, that's good enough for that, I think. Then surely the churning of milk bringeth forth butter, the wringing of the nose bringeth forth blood, so the forcing of wrath bringeth forth strife. It's an interesting end to this section, is it not? The words of Agar, they were weighty enough to be included in the Proverbs. People say, well, how do you decide? It's like, because people will, they pick at the Bible and they'll say like, well, what are the Dead Sea Scrolls or other books, like the Apocrypha and stuff. But a lot of that stuff, it's like, it's not like it changes anything, except some of it, which is, like I said, weird. We may do something about that and talk about it. I know it's a subject that people are always interested in. It held some interest for me years ago, and I've dismissed it for so long that like even my memory of it is so, like my thought, like, oh yeah, the other gospels and the Apocrypha and all that. Anyways, where am I? Down here. Oh wait. Okay, so the churning of milk. So when you stir up milk, you get butter. And if you wring the nose, you get blood. I mean, per se, I mean, I do wrestling, and like kids wrestle and they bleed when they get their noses bashed, and it's just what happens. Especially because it's wintertime. I mean, my nose bleeds periodically in the wintertime. That's because of my surgery. But anyways, so the forcing of wrath, bringing forth strife. Forcing of wrath, I want to see quickly what that means, because I don't want to give it short shrift. Forcing is squeezing, pressing, or wringing. Well, let me see. Is that the same word as the wringing of the nose? Hold on, I'm sorry. Let me bring you over with me. Okay. Just so you can see what I'm doing instead of, if I'm going to be quiet. So, the churning of milk is meats, and the wringing of the nose is the same word. Okay. See, in Hebrew, the verbs are identical. Churning, wringing, and forcing. It's literally the same word, which has several different meanings, but it's this word every single time. It says mitts, but it's pronounced meats because I's are long E's in most languages. And in Hebrew, when they transliterate it like that, it is eats. I think Greek works similar. And E's are usually pronounced A. Churning, forcing, wringing. From moots, pressure. Churning, forcing, wringing. Yeah, so pressing it, fine. Pushing it. But it's the same verb each time. And then you don't get that in the translation. I think it's beautiful that it's fine to say the churning of butter. But it's interesting to me to know that in the Hebrew, one verb did for all of those. So it is that act of force, which is interesting because when we were talking about forcibleness, the king, right? He, as the king ought to be or it is beautiful when a king has, when his authority is established. Obviously, in righteousness, that's the presumption and the idea. So the idea of, I don't know if those are necessarily connected, but I'm just thinking about it in terms of a lot of this is advice to kings, wisdom, and also to we who want to be heirs of Christ, because we too shall sit in a throne, as he promised. And so, the stirring, we could also translate stirring or churn, but it doesn't mean like pressing or whatever. The churning of milk, the wringing of the nose, and when you stir up wrath, I think stir up would have been a better translation of forcing. And obviously there's a lot of ways that this can be brought about. I mean, just people can stir up wrath without necessity. I mean, like just for the fun of it. Like, like to tell someone a story about something to make them mad about what somebody said when you could better left alone. Why do you want to do that? I know many times in society with people, back when I used to have friends and stuff that were worldly, there were people, and sometimes this is even true in church, you get people who want to stir things up. And of course, when you make someone wrathful, it brings trouble, strife, struggling between people, and and that's not kings aren't interested in stuff like that, and neither should people in the church in creating strife. What kind of sick mind do people have? People are sick, though. I mean, they love to see horrible things happen to people. There are kinds of disgusting people that love violence. There's people who actually find violence sexually arousing. Now, again, like I said, I don't have that, so I don't want to. Since that's not my infirmity, I don't really want to talk much about it because, I don't want to feel like I'm tooting my horn by comparison. But the world is kind of sick, and people who want to stir things up by making people angry, you're sick. Stop it. That's a weird proverb to end that on, though. So interesting because I don't know. It's like if I was ending my proverb, I'd feel like I wanted to end it with the most, like the most earth-shaking of all of them. But whatever. It's like because that one feels like just a normal proverb. As churning milk brings forth butter, and the wringing of the nose brings forth blood, so the forcing of wrath brings forth strife. It seems very normal. And again, if we connect it back to this, which I think it is, in closing, let me say, it's like, put a lid on your foolishness. Don't keep stirring it up. If you've thought evil, again, like I said, don't entertain that thing. If you keep stirring up evil thoughts, it's going to bring forth evil butter. And also when you think evil and you tell someone, it makes them angry against someone else maybe or whatever, and it makes trouble. Maybe it makes them just generally angry, and then they go start trouble with somebody for no reason because they're not godly. If you're supposed to be godly, how dare you? Don't stir up trouble. Don't make people angry unnecessarily. Sometimes people have to be told the truth that's going to make them angry. Okay, so sometimes you have to. It's not a question of, hey, we just want to please everybody. We just don't want to make anybody mad. Oh, no, you got to walk the line, man. It's not that easy. See, that's the thing is people want an easy path. They want to have the easy solution. They want to just read the Bible literally. They don't want to think. They don't want to have to learn wisdom and get understanding. Even though the Bible, which you say you believe literally, says get understanding, use wisdom. Even though it says that, we don't literally want to do it. That annoys me. It's like that's what you should be literally doing. If you take it literally, then do it literally. Live it literally. Anyways, thank you for joining me. Remember that the testimony of Jesus is the spirit of prophecy, and I'll be back again tomorrow, Lord willing, and I'm sure, I pray He is. I'm sure He is. Lord willing. We will live tomorrow, and we will bring you another Bible study. Here comes the music.
So shall my word be that goeth forth out of my mouth. It shall not return to me void, but it shall accomplish my pleasure. And it shall prosper in the thing for which I sent it. For thee shall go out with joy and be led forth with peace. And the mountains and the hills shall break forth before you into singing. And all the trees of the field shall clap their hands. Instead of the thorn shall come the fir. Instead of the briar